Hello everyone. In this session, we will learn the supply and demand for healthcare market. So, when we talk about the healthcare market or supply and demand for healthcare, we'll basically think of demand or willingness to have a healthcare service or desire for a particular health status. We, according to the classical definition of market demand, the demand is inversely related to the price of a particular commodity. That means when price increases, demand falls, and when price decreases, demand increases. So, demand for a particular commodity is dependent upon the price of that particular commodity. And if I plot them, higher the price, lower is the demand, and when price falls, the demand increases. And if I can connect them, then I can see that price falls, demand increases, and price increases, demand falls. Therefore, that demand and price are inversely related, and this inverse relation is directly associated with the diminishing marginal utility concept. Diminishing marginal utility. Now, while I am talking about the diminishing marginal utility, if we can go back to our previous sessions, marginal utility is the additional satisfaction I gain from one extra unit of consumption of a particular commodity. And when I consume more and more, the satisfaction level falls down. You know, the marginal utility curve falls down, and then the total utility curve gets flatter. Therefore, the marginal utility is decreasing over the consumption of every single unit or extra unit of a particular commodity. Therefore, when I have more of a particular commodity, not only my satisfaction is falling or additional satisfaction is falling, it also says that the demand for that commodity is decreasing. Therefore, with the increase in or with the number of commodity demanded, quantity demanded for a particular commodity, the demand for that, the satisfaction for that commodity also falls. And that is how, as the satisfaction falls, the demand falls, and the demand curve is downward sloping. Now, we have individual demand, which means that in a particular price, how much is the demand for two individuals. If we consider there are two individuals, and then for this price say 10 rupees, how much is the demand? Say for individual 1, the demand is 10 units, for individual 2, the demand is for 5 units. The market demand, which is basically the total demand for all the individuals existing in that particular market, or summed up demand for all the individuals. Therefore, the market demand for individual market demand for that particular market will be determined by the summing up of all the individual demand curves. Therefore, at the same price 10 rupees, if I sum these things up, so 10 plus 5 15, my demand will be at this here in this market demand curve M. Say at the 5 rupees or at the 15 rupees, my demand was 5 units for consumer 1, whereas for consumer 2 it may be 1 unit. It may be 1 unit. Therefore, when I am drawing my market demand curve for price 15 15 rupees, the demand will be at point somewhere here at 0.6, and I can join them. Say at price 15 my demand is 6 units, at price 10 my demand is 15 units, 10 plus 5, and over here it's 5 plus 1, and this is my new market demand. So I can add up, sum up all individual demand curves to get my market demand curve. So when I talk about this the downward sloping demand curve, there is always exceptions of a downward sloping the classical demand curve. So those exceptions are often found in even in a traditional market, exceptions of demand curve, and it states that the demand curve will not be downward sloping, or the relationship between price and quantity will not be inverse here, it will eventually be upward sloping and positive. So this kind of phenomena can be observed in number 1 in Giffen goods, which are named under Sir Robert Giffen. He found when the price of bread falls, the demand for bread also falls. That means the price and demand is going into the same direction. It can happen because those who used to take breads, because the price decreased, their real income increased. Now they can have larger amount of breads, and as bread is an inferior quality commodity, they could shift to a better bread, or a better quality bread. That is where the demand for that bread has decreased. Giffen goods most important characteristics is they are inferior in nature, as well as they don't have many substitutes, or only a few substitutes. Only a few substitutes. That means when the price increases, we have seen, it has been found that during famine, what happens, that say they have two food items, one is potato, one is meat. So in case of famine, the budget is a serious constraint. So people don't have income, they don't have much of food, so the price of both the food, potato and meat, is increasing. What happens with potato? Even if the price increases, it will not touch meat, the price of the meat, because the price of the meat is also increasing. Having said that, so in case of famine, they will demand for food, they will not go for meat, they will stick to potato, because with potato, even if the price is increasing for potato, with potato they will consume lesser amount of their savings, they can save more. Therefore, they will continue consuming potato, or the demand for potato will increase. Eventually, those who is to take meat, they will take more of a potato, because to save money, and then the potato's demand is increasing with the rise in price. Therefore, we can see that the price and demand again is moving towards the same direction, and that gives us a positively sloping demand curve, which is like this. When price increases, quantity demanded also increases. The second can be known as Snob effect. Before going to Snob effect, if I go back to these Giffen goods, there can be another example in connection to this Indian healthcare scenario. Say in a remote village, they have a quack doctor who is inferior in nature in terms of his service delivery, in terms of his education and all. So once I was visiting a village in Karnataka, and it's the village, the nearest primary health center is around 20-25 kilometers from them. So it was quite far. So in case of an emergency, they will go to the quack, and that is the only healthcare provider they have in that village or nearer to the village. When I was discussing with them, they said that even the primary health center don't have all the facilities we will require for a particular treatment. So they will send us to a district hospital which is 80 kilometers far away. So they cannot afford that. They don't have any transportation facility. So they will end up going to the quack, who eventually gives medicines for all kinds of treatments, and he can give medicines for homeopathy, allopathy as well as Ayurvedic. Fantastic. As he enjoys a kind of monopoly. Monopoly means that he is the only service provider in that particular locality. Even if he increases price, say in a particular scenario, if he sees that, okay, I can make some profit because there is a higher prevalence of a particular fever, more number of people are falling sick, so I can increase my fee from 50 to 70 rupees and I can make more money. But with this rise in price, the demand doesn't have any impact on that, because the demand continues to increase. Yes, because he is the only service provider who is providing their services, his services. Therefore, it's kind of an example of a given good. Eventually, if the price, he decreases his price, people may think that, okay, fine, now if he has decreased his price, then they may be inferior. Yeah. Then comes to the Snob effect. Now the Snob effect says, with higher the price, higher is the quality. Or it can also happen that when the price increases, the demand for a particular commodity increases, because that commodity, that good is a luxurious good, maybe a solitaire diamond. Even if the price is increasing, the demand, what happens in auctions basically, the demand for that particular good also increase. So again, it shows that the price increases and then the demand also increase, price increase and the demand increase, showing a positively sloping demand curve. The next can be Veblen effect. Now the Veblen effect is kind of similar to the Giffen goods, but very different, as they are similar in terms of Veblen goods also enjoys that they don't have many substitutes, and but the contrary to the Giffen goods, the Veblen goods are not the inferior commodities. Eventually, Veblen commodities or Veblen goods are kind of luxurious or valued highly. So for an example, if a painter, a famous painter, he dies, then the price of his paintings increases, and the demand for those paintings also increase. That's because nobody can substitute that particular, can replicate those paintings. That is the end, there is no close substitute, and he is not going to paint anymore. So his all paintings, if he is famous, his paintings are really, really valuable, So it doesn't have substitutes, but at the same time, because it is worthy, so they will keep it. So all these are very close to each other. So it is connected with the Snob effect again. And fourth is the Bandwagon effect. In Bandwagon effect, it is like I do because she does. That means if my friends go to an expensive hospital, I will go to that expensive hospital, because it can be my status, it can be because they are going, and If they are going, that means they know it well, it is good, so I can also go. It can also work the other way, such as I once had a discussion with a lady. She was from London School of Economics, and then she was studying a community in a village for a PhD. In a village in Madhya Pradesh. So we met in a conference in Korea, and then she was saying that what she found quite interesting is not very interesting, in fact, or not very unobvious. So is she met a lady who was very thin, having 3 or 4 small children, going to the field. Actually, if I remember correctly, she was taking her cattle to the field. So she said that you are undernourished, you are weak. So what kind of diet you take and all this? Then she replied that, who said I am weak or I am undernourished? I am absolutely fine, I am healthy. Look at that lady. She points out to another lady who looks elder than her, and she is equally thin, and she says that she was walking, so she says that she is working hard. She also has many children, and she is thin, so she is doing all these things. So, and she also takes the same kind of food I take, so there is nothing wrong. So this is the bandwagon effect. So and the other thing in terms of Snob effect, if I can connect it with this the healthcare scenario, is that say a particular hospital, a tertiary care hospital, which provides 5-star facilities, amazing facilities, a beautiful building, best medical technologies. So if I think that I am paying more, and that means the quality of the treatment is also better or the best, and then the demand for that particular hospital increases. So in such case, we eventually observe that for a certain section, if this section shows the poorer communities and this section shows the richer section of the society, then with the price, if the price increases, the quantity demanded increases, and if for the poorer section, if the price increases, the quantity demanded falls. That means for a certain section here, we see that there is a positively sloping demand curve, and for a certain section here, we see there is a negatively sloping demand curve. So, and this can happen because of this Snob effect. Yes, where we can see an exception to the demand curve. Now, as we mentioned that this demand curve is directly associated or determined by the utility or the satisfaction. So, my utility is different from many other, and hence my demand curve will be different from many other. So, given a price of a particular checkup, I may go to a hospital, I may not go to a hospital, where the others may act differently than me. That's primarily because of the preferences, the utility, the satisfaction I get out of that particular service. And as we mentioned that this is basically when we talk about this demand curve slope, then this lower the satisfaction, lower the demand, higher the satisfaction, higher the demand, and then this demand curve goes down primarily because of this diminishing marginal utility. Now, this diminishing marginal utility, or when I plot them, or the demand associated with the satisfaction or marginal utility, when I plot them against price, I get a downward sloping demand curve. Is this only price which determines the demand? No, there are several other factors which changes the demand pattern. Number one, number of buyers. Number two, income. So what happens in terms of number of buyers, that given the price, when my number of buyers increase, the price remaining same, my number of buyers increases, then the demand for that particular commodity increases. The price remains same. Similarly, the price remains same, my income increases, the demand for the commodity may increase, right? So what we can observe is that price remaining same, if my income increases, I can afford, if at 10 rupees of price I used to take 10 units of a particular commodity, say 10 apples in a month. Now with my increase in income, I can probably afford 15 apples. Therefore, my demand curve will shift outwards parallelly. My demand curve will shift parallelly outwards. At the same time, if my income falls, then I may have only 5 of apples, and then my demand curve will shift parallelly leftwards. Yes, it can be because of income, it can be because of number of buyers. So number of buyers increases, my curve shifts rightwards, my number of buyers decrease, my curve shifts leftwards. The third is tastes and preferences. Now it can be connected with, say, rituals. It can be connected with the rituals where people may not take non-vegetarian food during a period of time, or some religious function or something. So during that period of time, even if income, the price remains same, the demand for that particular commodity will go down. Or during a festival period, the demand for a particular commodity, say new clothes, go up. Yeah, so that's because of the tastes and preferences, that I prefer to buy new clothes during this period of time. I prefer not to, not to take more of non-vegetarian items during a particular period of time. So that is how, keeping the price same, my demand may change. Increase and it goes, demand curve shifts rightwards, decrease and then the demand curve shifts leftwards. Next is expectations. Now what does this expectation mean? This expectation says that, okay, this year I can expect there will be a cooler winter, so, or a longer monsoon or a heavy monsoon that can cause several viral fever or higher prevalence rate of viral fevers. So expecting that scenario, the medical stores may stock more of of this, or demand more of these paracetamols or pediatric medicines. Yes, because the demand, they think that the demand will increase, expecting the demand for paracetamol, or I think that, okay, I have a baby at home, so I will just keep some paracetamol for the pediatric medicines, expecting that there can be a bad weather this year. So the future expectations determine my demand. The next one, or if I expect that the price may go up in the next quarter, say price of gold or price of a certain commodity, or say a new tax is going to be imposed upon a certain medical device. So I will try to get that medical device this month or readily, because, and then if every individual thinks on that line, so the total market demand increases. And the fifth one is the related goods. So these related goods are basically complements and substitutes, complementary goods and substitute commodities, substitute goods. Now, what is substitute goods or complementary goods? Substitute goods are, if I have a commodity, or if there is another commodity which is close or with the same kind of use to what I use now. That means X as a commodity has a similar substitute, similar kind of commodity in Y. If I don't use X, I can use Y. Complementary goods are, if I need to X, Y, I also must use Y. That can be, the contact lens and contact lens solution, your right shoe and left shoe, specs and then the glasses, So these are the complementary goods, where the substitute goods can be two similar medicines from two different companies, right? See, if I take this example now for complementary goods and substitute goods, say first let us take this substitute goods. Let's understand this taking an example. When price of iodex rises, quantity demanded for amrutanjan also increases. That's because when price of iodex increases, the demand for iodex will decrease, and then that will shift to the next substitute goods, and the demand for amrutanjan will also increase if they move from iodex to amrutanjan, or say dolo to crocin or something like that. Yeah. If I plot them, then I can see price of iodex and quantity of amrutanjan, and I can see an upward sloping curve, because price of iodex increases, quantity of amrutanjan also increase, an upward sloping demand curve for substitute goods, not for the same commodity. We have to remember this. So this is not the exception to the demand curve, right? Even if it shows the positively sloping demand curve, this is not the exception. This is not the exception. This is the relationship between two commodities. Similarly, if we look at the complementary goods, then we can see that if the price of contact lens increase, it eventually decreases the quantity demanded for the solution. It eventually decreases the quantity demanded for the contact lens solution. Now, why so? Because if the price of the contact lens increase, the demand for the contact lens decrease, and if the demand for contact lens decreases, what people will do with having contact lens solution? So the demand for contact lens solution will also decrease, because they are complementary to each other. The best example can be when the price of petrol increases, the demand for car decreases, because no petrol, no car, right? So, or the demand for petrol car decreases, or the price of diesel increases, the demand for diesel car decreases. So, if I can plot them, it shows a downward sloping demand curve, because over here I have price of contact lens and over here I have quantity demanded for contact lens solution. So, when price of contact lens increases, the quantity demanded for contact lens solution decreases. So, it shows an inverse relationship between price and then the contact lens solution. Thank you.